Yo, what's going on, guys? Halfway through the week now of what has been April has really, for the past 10 days or 11 days, has really slowed down in terms of trading setups and really just in terms of even market movement, even if there were setups. And I think there are a ton of setups that I want to go over again today. First, I want to look at that Bitcoin, the smaller time frame levels we were looking at yesterday, why I think this is important to watch, and how it can kind of guide price for the rest of the day and for tomorrow and probably for the rest of the week, why I think this little pivot level is going to be important. And then also, I've kind of gone back and forth now, I think 2 times this week, about when I entered the week, I really liked how a lot of alts looked, and I still do, looking at coins like, so I can get my drawings out of here, looking at coins like Stratus, looking at coins like Polychain, right, a lot of cycle low plays or coins right at where they've bottomed out, both in March and in September. And then you have other coins like Aeon and Go, which have so far respected these levels, right? Aeon, I mean, there are tons of these setups, right? Some of which I've traded, and I know quite a few of you guys have traded in the past couple months. And now as they're all getting back down to that level, so far what I'm seeing, we're seeing it with Go, we're seeing it today with Aeon. So far what we're seeing is these levels actually are being respected. I know yesterday I kind of teetered back and said, I think I'm actually going to be patient again and probably don't want to be swinging Binance alts. But for the most part, the 5 that I'm showing on my screen right now, and we'll go through them slower in a second, every single one so far is actually respecting the cycle low and is kind of respecting that support and being able to move up. So it's such a tough call. I'm kind of leaning back towards maybe even wanting to be exposed to 1 or 2 or 3 again. I think that the biggest thing is we aren't seeing movement, whether or not of the 4 or 5 I'm going to show today, you do want to move into, or I move into, even if coins are respecting this level in the case of Aeon or in the case of Go, it's not like there are big movements yet. If there's any kind of movement, it's 1 day long, it's 5 or 10%, and then it's just kind of stagnant again, right? Even with Go, which moved to 20% and then kind of right back to where we are. So there's a ton of stuff and a ton of setups, I think, to look at, but still halfway through this week in April, very similar to last week, it's like alts just can't even string together more than 1 day of 5 or 10 or 15% of movement, right? And it's totally market dependent sometimes on how much you can trade and what you can really work out of it, right? I know there's probably always going to be setups on Bitcoin, but for what I like to focus on mostly is alts in the large cap plays, and they really just are not giving too much room to play with. So I'll look at a couple of those setups in depth today, which we didn't do yesterday. I kind of just scanned over them, what I would want to see out of them, what I think is most attractive, but I'm still on the fence in terms of wanting to play them. It's like I've gone back and forth every single day, and it's just because they look so good, but they're not moving. So that's kind of what I want to cover today. And then also 2 coins that I have been trading that I want to look at. EOS, which has literally just been flat for ever since I really moved into it, right? And aiming for that 129. I think this is that pivot to watch, right? And then it flipped back to support. Now we've kind of just been sitting on top of it, waiting for the move up. This one's taking a slight dip down today, 1 or 2%. For whatever reason, all majors, it seems like, are now kind of getting a slide. So I want to look at EOS. I want to look at Bitcoin Cash as well. I know a lot of people are looking to trade it or are in it already. I continue to think that the most attractive play from a probability that you'll be right, and my expectation that it'd be a profitable trade, I continue to think that the best play here, nothing has changed, would be a close above 0.065, and then I would have good conviction it runs like another 20 or 30%. Right? Until that happens, I think this dip is finally getting attractive, but to be honest, this chart looks quite ugly until we have that close above 0.065. But I know a lot of people want to look at this one, so I'll look at the current price as well, what I think is kind of going to happen here. But the play for me stands, and it's the play that I have in the Discord, above 0.065. I just think that's just the far better entry. And then, we'll look at Tron as well, Bueller. It's just been really a week of a lot of these setups look good, but I'm cutting them or kind of just backing away because I want to see them turn first, and I think my expectancy goes way up, even if I miss out on the first 2 or 3% of the play, as opposed to right now momentum on everything is still kind of down. So Bueller, I'll definitely look at that on why I'm de-risking there, kind of some of the more acute signals there. For sure. All right, I'm going to start with Bitcoin, guys, and then we will dive into everything else. Bitcoin's always the foundation for what I'm doing, and I think it should probably be the same way for you. We'll look at this. Quick shout out to everyone that's in here. Tarek, I will definitely hit Bitcoin Cash, Olive, Deckard, Bueller, Richie. What's going on, guys? Serious laugh. I don't think there's an echo. Sometimes it's playing twice on Discord. Yeah, cool. What's up, Jimmy? Bueller, I got you. All right. Quick shout out to everyone else that's lurking. I know some people like to watch this later, especially in the earlier times. And like I said, guys, especially if you're new and you're like, what the heck? There hasn't been a lot of trade updates. There hasn't been a lot of new trades. It's a total ebb and flow thing. And I'm never going to just me personally trade if there's kind of nothing going on. I know some people are kind of just tuned to believe that there should be 2 or 3 trades every single day, or they should be trading all the time. And that works for some people. I just think for the vast majority of most people, it's not going to work. And even for me, and I sit here all day, I spend 10 or 12 hours a day here, I still play much better kind of waiting for my market and then adding risk when I see something that I like. So I know that is sometimes frustrating or not understood by some people on how it can be so little activity one week and then, kind of every single day there's like 2 trades. That's just how it is sometimes. Let me check one thing on Discord. Cool. Machuno, cool. All right. So here's how I'm thinking about Bitcoin. Nothing has changed from the higher time frame, right? And we just looked at this yesterday, so really nothing has changed even from yesterday, but very similar to Bitcoin Cash. My confidence level goes up drastically if we get above 55.50, the current swing high, the only level where there has been previous support or resistance, the whole breakdown, right? Why is that level important? It's right there. It's the only level in this entire vacuum. So above there, I think things get attractive again short term. I think it's pretty easy to be bullish there short term. Sure, it could get above there and fake out. I think that probability is quite low. What I'm looking at before that, right, because I've been waiting on kind of that play or that dip, and really we've just now traded ever since the 7th, so a full 10 days now, which is, this time where Bitcoin has done this chop. It's pretty much been the last 10 days where alts just can't catch a move up, where majors have pretty much stalled, right? As Bitcoin's doing this choppy and decisive movement, the rest of the market is kind of waiting on pause as well. So it's kind of a double thing. You'd like to assume that when alts aren't having nice setups for entry or alts aren't having movement, at least Bitcoin will be giving you some movement or a trend. And right now, for about 10 days in April, it's been both coins can't find a trend. Anyways, the level that I do think is important, regardless of no trend being found here, and this just kind of being consolidation or chop, this pivot level, right? If you think back to the explosive move up, right? This candle comes from 4,100, right where that stopped, the top of that candle, it kind of became that short-term resistance for really the first whole week of April, all the way through the 6th or the 7th. This is where price was kept below. Right? And then immediately when we have the first 4-hour candle close above, I like to use 4 hours. You can have any kind of candle that you like to use as kind of your standard. As soon as we have that close above, right, you can see that level very clearly as price trades back into it. Hopefully I'm illustrating this good. As price is trading into it over and over, right, what's happening? That level was resistance and is now flipping to support, right? A little pivot level, a little flip. Support resistance flip, you can call it a retest, you can call it whatever you want, right? And then once again, back to resistance, right? And now that we've had our close above, I think this is very, very similar to price action on the 7th of April. That led to the first test of 54.50. It doesn't mean that has to happen again, but I like to use, so many examples of this in recent Bitcoin price action history. I like to use, and you guys have seen this over and over, especially if you're with me in January, February, I like to use kind of an important level. Let's say, price clearly found resistance once it got below 4,100 at 4,100. That was our resistance here, right? Resistance once, right? You see wicks trading into it, closing below, resistance again for a third time, for a fourth time, right? So I understand that if price can close above this level, that changes the dynamic, right? So that's why that daily close on the 1st of April is so important to me. Daily close above a level that continues to be wicked into and close above or close below, right? As in that resistance is being respected. Hopefully you can see what I mean by that. We're wicking through, the candle is closing above, right? Very different from a candle closing actually above here, like we have here. Right? If it wicks through and closes below, that indicates that resistance is still being respected. So I can always look back in history and say, okay, how was this level treated in the past? Right? I understand that if it wicks through and price closes back below, that resistance is still respected. The one time that didn't happen, right, as this level is broken, where do we move up to? It moved up to at least 4,400. Right? So if you think back just 2 weeks ago, the 1st of April, kind of the last Bitcoin swing for me, if it closes above, where am I aiming for? I just want to look exactly what price did last time. It does not mean it's going to do that again, but it gives me a really, really good idea of what happened when that condition happens again. Right? So it closed above 4,100. Where do I aim for? 44. That happens. Obviously, it runs a lot further. But that gives you a good idea of how you can kind of apply that exact same concept here, right? That 4,100 resistance of looking at when a level is respected versus when a level is broken. Right? So as long as you're being consistent with the time frame, consistent with the level, I really think this can kind of be applied to any level. So respected, wicks through, closing below, wicks through, closing below, wicks through, closing below. And then we have our condition now of what just happened right here on the 16th, the beginning of the week. Right? What happened last time we closed above this level? Where did price move to? Logically, it moved to the next high time frame resistance. Right, so if I'm just using last kind of price action, the most recent example or the most recent time period of when this happened, I'm struggling to find the right word there. I probably still can't. It moved up to that next high time frame resistance. So if I'm thinking about the path of least resistance or establishing a bias or thinking probably what is my expectation of where price is going to move and where would I be wrong, right? Well, it's pretty clear. If I think that, or just looking at what happened most recently, what I would expect to happen last time this condition was met, just like with 4,100, right? It doesn't guarantee we are going to pop, but I can use the last time this happened as a really good guide, right? Now we have it again. It doesn't mean we have to move up here, but I think this is probably a pretty good indication or a good guide of what happened last time. And as this level flips back, right, all of a sudden I can use this as kind of a bias. I can use it as a trade setup, whatever you want to do. As long as this level, right, and we covered this yesterday before kind of we have this really clean retest into it, right, close above, price is trading up, and it's already used this level as kind of a support. Right, so that's my bias. That's my expectation, is that this is probably the path of least resistance, right? Moving up to, 53.50 or probably this high time frame resistance would be my real target. Where would I be wrong on this? I'd be wrong if a 4 hour started to close back below 51.50 here. Right, 4 hour close, you can have a hard stop, whatever you prefer. And I'd be looking, or at least having a bias, or at least having an expectation that price continues to move up here until 51.50 is broken. Right? So smaller time frame, that's kind of what I'm looking at for Bitcoin. I think you could definitely set up a trade like this. I think this makes a lot of sense. If alts continue to give me nothing for the next, rest of the day and tomorrow, maybe I do take this if Bitcoin kind of continues to consolidate right here. I think this trade setup makes some sense. Then again, it's for the shorter time frame traders. If that's your game, go for it. I think this is, regardless of whether or not you take that setup, it's going to be fun to watch and is going to be a really nice and early sign of whether or not Bitcoin actually can continue up to 55.50, right? If this level all of a sudden breaks, if we have 4 hour close down here, I'm probably thinking the dip actually happens to 48, right? But for right now, that's kind of really the only thing Bitcoin's giving in this chop. I think this 51.50 level is a really nice pivot to keep your eyes on. Whether or not you actually want to trade the flip and run it to 55.50 is up to you. I think, even if you're not trading it, that's a really good guide of your expectation of where Bitcoin can go next and whether or not you expect it to dip further. Right? 4 hour close below here, all you have to do is set a little alert. Right? If price starts to trade below there, you'll get an email, you get an alert, and you say, okay, Bitcoin's probably going to dip a little bit lower. I can probably, I think I'll have a better chance of buying at 4,800. Right? If that doesn't happen, I'm probably expecting 55 next. Right? So that's kind of my bias level. That's kind of my pivot. That's what I'm looking for the rest of the day and for the rest of the week. And that's all I really have of interest for Bitcoin there in this chop. What that's doing to majors. Majors have literally stalled out, very similar to Bitcoin, I think. We have EOS, which has been my favorite for like a week or two. And going into the month, right, ADA and Bitcoin Cash, my favorite, and they both just absolutely took off. EOS, I thought, has just been consolidating, and ever since kind of that April 1st or the beginning of the month, end of March, April 1st, right, when ADA and Bitcoin Cash were able to go on serious runs as Bitcoin moved, my expectation was, or my thought process was, the exact same way that ADA and Bitcoin Cash moved after Bitcoin caught its 4,100 run, right? That's what I was thinking EOS would do, and it just still hasn't. I think the narrative and the catalyst is still intact here, right? June 1st, apparently EOS has some big secret announcement they're going to make, or Block 1 has this big announcement they're going to make. I think that's still positive, but for whatever reason, this still just has not moved. I thought it would by now. It just hasn't. It hasn't moved down, hasn't moved up either. So it's literally still just flat. I think if it does have a close below this 102, I'll probably cut this one early. It just seems right now, and it might seem like I'm being just very defensive or very cautious the past week or the past 10 days. I would say that's probably an accurate observation. I am, and I would be less focused on like whether or not I'm actually doing that or more focused on, if you should be doing that. I want to pass along objective analysis in that right now the market is not rewarding adding on risk, right? You can think of it as if upside volatility or volatility, as a whole is high, it's usually rewarding risk. So, if in March, I think is a really good example, right? Anyone who is taking risk from end of February till pretty much the beginning of April, right? The market was rewarding that risk. And what I mean by that is adding on risk would be, either being long alts or having exposure to alts or having exposure to large caps, whatever it is, right? The market was rewarding you for being exposed to alts. If you look at Poly as an example, right? If you were taking risk or adding exposure anytime in February up until here, right, pretty much the end of March, right when Bitcoin caught its pop, and this is evident on almost every single chart. I'm trying to find another one. The market was rewarding that. So far, for the past 10 days, it's not, right? There is no, there has been really no benefit for having exposure there, right? End of February, pretty much until April 1st. So the market has been rewarding risk. Right now, it's not. So for me to want to add on risk, I would like to see either volatility as a whole pick up, right? Whether or not things start moving down faster or up faster, that'd be a good first sign. But really, I want to see at least a couple of coins turn around. And we're slowly kind of seeing it, right? With Aeon, it had a slight pop today at its support here. But to put things in perspective, I mean, even Aeon, which is one of the better movers today, off a support, which has been really nice, a really nice setup for the past few months, 8 or 10% move, and that looks really good compared to the rest of the market because everything else is just not moving, right? So I know I've been conservative lately. It seems like I'm really kind of cutting things early or not wanting to let things breathe or, fine taking a 1% loss and things like that, or kind of just being hesitant on trades. It's just because I don't see the market rewarding or paying for taking that extra risk right now. As soon as that comes back, then I try to tackle on the risk, right? If we see alts being rewarded for, it's just kind of a different way to think about it. Hopefully I'm explaining that correctly. That's kind of my thoughts on alts. There's quite a few setups that I want to look at. Aeon is one of them. I think GoChain is another one. You guys know this from the beginning of the week. I think GoChain continues to look attractive. I think all these look attractive. I mean, I can mark up and chart and explain 5 or 6 of them, but until the market shows that it wants to reward that risk or that alts can actually trend up in this environment, it doesn't seem like worth it to me yet to be exposed there, right? I love scaling into alts when they're priced, cheaply, right? It's usually a good play, but until 1 or 2 get rewarded, That's still kind of my game plan of wanting to be patient there, right? Even if I miss out on the first 2 or 3% on one swing, right, I can move into my other 3 or 4 once I see that coins are actually respecting those levels and are ready to move up off those levels, right? So that's still general strategy for you. That's what I'm doing. It does not mean that's what you need to be doing. Every single month, my goal is to pass along what I think can help, the majority of traders and investors, right? And I want to give my objective kind of opinion and provide market commentary that should be actionable, should help you in your decision making, right? So to me, that's what I'm seeing. If that changes, I will immediately hop on here and say, okay, it looks like, 1 or 2 alts are actually moving up off these levels. I think it probably makes sense to be taking that risk. Until then, I think risk, if anything, is being added. There is no reward, so you're really just kind of upping risk for no reward right now. Right? That's one of the kind of the flip sides. If you think of a risk reward ratio as you look at these really nice setups, right? I'm going to try to explain this one more way. If I look at something like Poly, which I think looks great, right? The risk reward, I think this is what you think about immediately when someone says risk reward, right? And it's the tool is called risk reward, right? So you have your entry, right? So what's your reward you're looking for? You're probably looking to run to at least that swing high, hopefully the second swing high. So you look at this and you say, okay, I'm willing to give it a little bit of room below the support. What's my risk reward here? 7 or 8 to 1, right? Sure, that's what your R would be on that trade. That's what you'd be willing to risk 1 R, and you'd be willing to make 6. You'd be willing to make 3 or 7 times that, right? That's the risk reward. But the flip side of that is that's what would happen, right? If you actually obtain kind of, if you're successful in that trade, right? It would be a 3R trade or a 7R trade. If no risk right now is being rewarded in the market, right? Then what's your probability of that trade working out? What's the expectancy of that trade, right? If every single trade is either sitting flat or moving slightly down, it's like your expectancy is getting a lot closer to even or a lot closer to negative, no matter how good the risk reward is, right? So I will be the first one to say, I think alts look incredible, and I'm excited to trade some. I thought it would happen this week. Maybe it still does. I'm excited to trade some, and I have so many setups that I can mark up and move into immediately once I see 1 or 2 do well. But thinking about it in terms of how many of these are actually moving, right? Just even if I see 1 or 2 a day, and I'm not even seeing that, I'm seeing maybe 1 with Aeon today up 8 or 10%. The rest are kind of very, very, very isolated pumps that retrace quickly. Until this probability, or at least 1 or 2, can turn the corner, I think it's really tacking on risk without getting that reward. Right? Even if the ratio of where it could go looks good, yes, things are cheap. Right now, you can definitely look at things and say, okay, they're cheap. It's probably a good place to buy. But if momentum stays negative or stays near 0 and there's no volatility, it's adding on risk right now that I just don't think is being rewarded. Right? So just kind of wanted to share my thoughts on that. You can disagree with me, agree with me. That's fine. I'm just trying to pass along my views. And because I think over and over again, what I find most important, right? In February and March, I had a very good trading month, right? And then beginning of April, I was probably tacking on risk to 2 or 3 trades that I shouldn't have been in, right? And then that you have to kind of realize the loss. And then for the next week, which we've been in right now, the past 7 or 10 days, I think what's so much harder, or at least it always was for me, and I think it still is even mentally as I'm going through this and kind of making my decision and laying out my thought process, it still is tough to say, should I be trading, right? Or should I kind of just be sitting on my hands here? And I think that a lot of times it's like, how do I find the next setup that's going to be profitable? When a lot of the times it's like, is it a market that I even want to be finding that setup in, right? And those little things, it's like that's the difference right now of me being in 5 or 6 alt plays, which are kind of doing nothing. And then if all those fail, it's like that's a pretty big hit, right? So that's still my thought process. Take it or leave it, but just kind of want to pass that along. I'll answer some questions now. Bueller, I will look at Tron. Mostly Bueller, honestly, I think what I kind of just said should explain most of it. But here's another way, Tron specifically, right? When I first took the trade, or when we first looked at this would have been on April 3rd or April 4th, right? I kind of didn't play it right at the bottom. I saw it turn up a little bit first, April 4th or whatever it is, right? My fills weren't perfect at all. They were in the 525, 528, 530 range. right? And the difference of Tron back then was it hadn't tested this level yet. Right, so we have the yearly open. I understand that this is my support that I think has added significance, right? It's where the yearly candle started. It's not just a random support picked here or a random support picked here, right? It's the yearly open. It's where that candle started. There's added significance there. Market psychology, right? People are going to look to defend that level. So as I see price trade into it on the first play, and I'll go to current price action now after, right? As we trade into it the first time, right? I see this happen. I think 12 or 24 hours passes. Right? And this is kind of the reaction we saw. We see price trade into it, moves up, move back down, it's defended, and I say, okay, I'm ready to jump in. I think it can make it to at least mid-range or top of the range. Right? Now on the second attempt at this, right, and that turned out to be a nice 5 or 10% play. I didn't get a book full of profits, which I'm a little bit upset with, but still, profitable play. Now as we move back into it, right, we're trading back into this level. One quick second. I think it's a little bit less attractive in the sense that look at the way that price bounced this time, right? So as we trade back into this support, you could look at this from a big picture, and I think it's good to do this first and say, okay, this is pretty much the exact same setup, right? How was my setup last time? I want to be entering as close as I can to the bottom of this range. I want to be aiming for the top of the range. I'm wrong if we're below this range, right? Now as we trade back into it for a second time, though, and I look at kind of how price action is developing, this first reaction that we had is weaker. Right? I think the volume is a little bit lower on this touch here. Really no follow through on the bounce, right? And then as we're kind of trading past that first bounce, which happened, in the 11th or a few days ago when I was considering the swing, and then I say, okay, I think I'm going to take it, right? How this has developed, right? You start to trend up, can't even get as high as kind of this most recent bounce, and now we're starting to trade even lower into this support, right? So it's not a good sign. It's not a good show of demand, right? Where price, if you look at kind of the I guess the shape of the bounce last time, right? We have the lowest touch, move up, and then immediately have a higher low, which we can move higher than, right? This time, we have our first touch, our reaction at the yearly open, reaction at where I want to be entering. We move up. We're getting just back down as low. We can't even bounce as high, right? And now we're getting lower. So to me, that's kind of like, I don't know, it's not nearly the exact same analogy, but think of Bitcoin at 6K, right? At like November of last year. It's like as this level, as this level continues to get hit into, and then we just barely bounce. Then we move into it, and we just barely bounce. Then we move into it, right? That to me is usually a sign or kind of indicative of, or could be interpreted as demand just isn't willing to step in as we bounce into it, bounce a little bit higher, bounce into it, bounce less higher each time. That to me isn't a good sign. I think it still could turn around, right? It still could respect this yearly open and move up. The setup is still only invalidated if we move below this yearly open, but I'm just kind of getting early signs or an early hint that this touch certainly looks weaker, right? We move into it, barely bounce up, and now we're already starting to trade lower, as opposed to kind of the last bounce, immediately trade higher, close higher, barely move down, close higher. Right? I think you can kind of see just the pattern there. It's nothing too technical in saying, volume didn't reach this certain high or the indicator is showing this certain height. It's more of a structural thing of the reaction was weak, the bounce was an even lower high, and now we're already trading lower. Right? This could literally be the perfect entry, though. I mean, now it's right at yearly open. I would much rather, it's like so many of the other alts, right? It's like this trade that worked out for the 10 or 15% swing. I would rather have to buy 2 or 3% higher with the expectation or the increased chances that it's a profitable trade, right? By like 20 or 30%. I don't know if you could quantify it like that, but right, if structurally it starts to trade at least, above 530, 540, right, then I think that this actually can be defended and will probably move at least to here and probably back to here, right? With pretty good confidence. Until that happens, to me, it's like, I don't know. That looks like a really, really weak touch. I think the chances are higher that this level breaks this support, right? Hopefully that makes sense. And Beeler, I don't expect to be right on every single one of these. It's some of it is feel. I would say most of it is based on playing a certain setup like this over and over and over, and kind of having records and having it journaled and things like that. Hopefully that makes sense. Bitcoin Cash. I know someone wanted me to dive a little bit deeper into this one. Let's take a look. I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream. I am staying with my view on 0.065 gives you a way higher probability that this trade works out. I know some people are long or bought initially on that news of Binance delisting, and it's right back to where it was. And the way that I viewed it even after that pop, right, it was don't FOMO. I think a buy above 0.065 works. I bought, but I think probably the best buy or the best pullback buys in the 0.058 or 0.6 area, and that's right where we are. It's really similar to that Bitcoin pivot that I showed at 5150. Bitcoin Cash kind of has the exact same thing, right? Of this insane pump that happened, and then this level really quickly either becomes support or resistance, right? Like 3 or 4 different times. So I do think there is a chance that I'll draw this out if you can't see it. Right, this level being resistance right below it, wicks through. So I do think there's a chance that this level kind of steps in as support. I would say this is really the first time that Bitcoin Cash has looked attractive since that Binance delisting pump. I thought it was going to continue to 0.065 already by now. I was wrong in thinking that it would. But still, I think that's probably this is still probably a pretty risky entry. I thought it would have already caught a bid by now. It just hasn't. I think it looks quite good on here. I think this is the first level where a dip is kind of attractive. It would also be a really nice inverted head and shoulders, right? I don't like to trade patterns until they complete, but if you are kind of planning or anticipating something's going to happen, it doesn't hurt to look at what could form. Right? This would be that left shoulder. This would be the right shoulder. And if this forms, right, that would be the right shoulder. Right? Now we'd need to see it turn the corner and actually complete. So for me to actually trade this inverted head and shoulders, once again, it gets back to the original trade. I want price above 0.065, 0.066 to play this. Right? That would be a confirmed inverted head and shoulders. Then I start thinking, okay, price can move at least the length of that head and shoulders. So what I'd be looking at least the 20% move. I think it moves probably 30 or 35%. Right? So still, regardless of whether or not that pattern forms, I'm still kind of looking at the exact same entry. This is the riskier buy. It could be the better priced buy. I think there's a way higher chance that this kind of trade fails, though. So I'm still looking at the much safer play up here. That's my view on Bitcoin Cash, guys. I can make a call here. I just think it's going to be way, way, way lower success rate, way lower confidence that I'm right. I know I just filled all 30 minutes, but I'm happy to take a couple minutes of questions if anyone has some for me. Light on trading, though, guys. Hopefully that explains kind of my view on why I think it is in terms of risk and in terms of whether or not you're being paid for that risk. As soon as that does return to the market, that's kind of the time where you have to ignore the greed or the fear and just play the setup. If you do see one or two altcoins turning and respecting that support, and you do see alts at least popping more than 10%, right? Then it's like, okay, I just have to play those setups. Right now, that's not happening. So I'm holding off. It's been to put it bluntly, it's just been a really boring week, really boring, really 10 days ever since kind of the first couple of days of April. But that is how the market is sometimes, right? Anyone have anything for me? Did I cover everything? Cool. Very cool. So yeah, guys, I have like 3 or 4 different alts, I would say, that I think all look amazing. Go, Aeon. I still think Poly and Strat look really great as well. There's a lineup of plays that probably worked out best for us in February and March that I'm getting excited about. If Loom can get just a little bit lower, I think Loom gets really attractive again as well. If Loom starts to get back down by kind of its 1100 sat area, I think that starts to look really attractive. There's a couple LRC which caught a run kind of really late March from its September 12th low, right? It's back in a zone where I find this really, really attractive, right? Where would a setup like this be wrong? If this support breaks, I'd be worried. But right now, I think, a lot of these plays look so good, right? Either running that 30 or kind of that 70%, giving yourself room for 6 or 7%. I think so many of these look amazing, but I want to see at least one do well, right? Otherwise, I'm playing the game of, can I pick bottoms? Can I catch a knife? It's like trying to step in front of a train and like time when you jump out, as opposed to just waiting for the train to head back the other direction. That's a terrible analogy. Daniel, did I see the Ovechkin punch? Yes, I did. It was pretty nasty. I feel bad for that guy. I'll only comment on this really quickly, but I feel bad for that guy. He's never fought before. I think that was actually one of his first NHL games. He's a rookie. Whether or not he started that with Ovechkin or Ovechkin started that, I really don't respect that from Ovechkin. I think he knows that. The guy was Russian too. He definitely knew that. I don't like to see that. I know Ovechkin isn't a fighter either, but he outweighs him by like 80 pounds, man. He's a big dude. He probably weighs like 230. Maybe not 230, but I bet he's in the 200 pounds, like 210. I don't like that at all. I don't like seeing that. And I love fights, but that's tough, man. That kid's small. I don't like that, Daniel. I'm an Ovechkin fan too. Tarek, can you also check Zill? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. God, I mean, all these charts are looking so good. Yeah, it's just tough to see that, man. He's a young kid. He's quick. He's gonna be really good in the league, but coming from someone who's had a lot of concussions, that hurts to see. Zill, from a big picture, right? Before I look at kind of the individual setup here, Tarek. That's only goes back to March. I guess that is when Zill started trading. I think this is probably the best reference point we're going to have, as well as the all-time low. I think Zill, to me, right, two levels here that I think are definitely worth paying attention to and probably having an alert for. Right? This is the most ideal place in history that you could buy Zill. And this is 366 sats. Call it up to 380. Right? Kind of stacking bids in there. And that looks like that's right where it wicked to. I think because there is this little shelf here, right? Here's previous support, and you can see it one more time right here, right? Because there is this little shelf here, I think I wouldn't want to be buying at the current price, unless I can get it at 360 or something, until price can close, just like the Bitcoin example, right? We have a close above this level, this 430 sat level. First close above, price can really take off and move higher. So I think there's two conditions that I would want to enter Zill here if you were looking for an entry in Zill. Right? I'd be looking for this close above 430. You can see it back from here. Right? That led to a serious volume increase and a nice push higher. Right? So a close above 430 I think would be nice. Or being patient, waiting for that 360 fill. 368, 369, whatever it is. Right? So I can either buy it, 10% cheaper, or I buy it a tiny bit higher with a way higher, expectation that this is actually a profitable trade. That's kind of how I'm looking at Zill. I think that one should be pretty easy. Close below and validates. Deckard. BCH, would I consider the lows before April 10th around 0.057? This is the last one I'm going to look at, guys. I'm going to wrap this up. As another possible support. Yeah, I would. You can even kind of take that level from further back. The 0.055, 0.057, you could. I think these levels have just a lot less significance, and it's really the reason why, Deckard, it's really the reason why, even looking at this level, which I think is good, right? And as we popped into this, I said 0.058, 0.06 is probably the first level where it gets attractive again on a dip, right? I think this level's attractive, just like I think, 0.057 could be. I'm just always going to give the lower time frame stuff on Bitcoin Cash a lot less significance. When it moves, it tends to have just really explosive moves, and it moves, from these these huge kind of daily support levels up to the top of a range of a daily resistance. And then when it has the, it moves through the range from a huge daily resistance down to a daily support, right? And those are kind of the moves where I think you can get paid on Bitcoin Cash. I generally try to stay out of playing anything smaller than that on Bitcoin Cash because the moves are just so violent, right? And it's like, I really think those are some of the only setups that I can capitalize on there. The market's also, especially if you trade it on BitMEX, it's nearly impossible to play it unless you are kind of trading those higher time frame swings. The contracts are huge. It can get really thin. So yeah, Deckard, I do see that level. I also see 0.055. I also see kind of 0.059 where it's at right now. I just think I give those a lot less significance than looking at just the really high time frame, daily kind of top of the range, bottom of the range. Right? I kind of want to avoid as much as I can playing the middle of the range on any of these Bitcoin Cash plays. I think the money is made at the top of the range, the money's made at the bottom of the range, and then staying out when it's not there, right? Not getting my hands dirty, kind of getting chopped up. Jimmy Wallet, if EOS starts closing below 102, I am, Jimmy, I can't give you advice. I am going to. Honest Olive, last question here. Do you think any of these ICO coins or IEO coins like Stellar and Fed are going to pop if you're getting beaten down, even though they're still trading well above their initial investment price? Olive, I do not. Even if they did, I don't think there would be a play there for me. And it's just because, like, let's look at one of them. This is like a really good example of, I saw so many people trying to call this or trade it. Like, for days and days after it would pop, they'd say, you know what, I think it's finally going to pop after it's getting sold down, or I think it's finally going to. These coins, I mean, they're still trading at multiples and multiples above where they opened, and we haven't seen any of them trade longer than a month or two, and no real support or floor or any kind of demand has been established other than the initial hype. And I don't even think that was demand, right? That was entirely driven by narrative, entirely driven by momentum, entirely driven by retail or anyone else just chasing momentum, right? As opposed to other coins, the reason that I stay away from, I think there's two ways to make money, and ICOs and IEOs are no different, right? It's either being in at a price that you think is attractive, a valuation you think is attractive, and then when it hits, you can sell it a multiple, or waiting for it to trade for a few months, letting it go through one cycle, and then seeing where those kind of levels are establishing. Poly is a great example, right? Without having an understanding of where Poly had traded in September, like let's assume that Poly was an IEO and it just came out in March, right? You have it run up, you have it run down, and now this is like the only support it's ever tested. I have no idea where this thing is traded before when it was really beaten down. So I try to avoid things like that, IEOs, ICOs, that just hit market. Sure, they could pop. I don't think it happens. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. All right, that's all I got, guys. I am going to wrap this up, and I will see you in the group a little bit later. I know it's been a slow week. Trust me, I'm looking for things, but I'm not going to churn my own account, and it's probably best to wait for the ideal trading conditions for yours as well. That's kind of my view. That's my view on Bitcoin. That's my view on alts. That's all I got. Be in the group. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace, guys.